Setting up the third recording for the evening. Okay. And go back to sharing my screen. Alrighty. Going back to the Moodle page, the final thing I want to look at tonight is the sample questions number 2, because this is just a list of a bunch of HBSE questions. And I want to ask us to go through each one of these to see what's the theory, what's the population, what's the issue or the focus issue, and what analysis verb is the person using in this sentence. So we're going to take this first sentence. Use the Bowen family systems theory to describe the effect of trauma on the family emotional process. What's the population?
Families?
Absolutely, families is the population. So it's pretty general. What's the topic of interest?
Trauma?
Yeah, it's the effect of trauma on family emotional process. So the analysis verb, I think, is a weak one. I'm going to urge you to not use describe. It's the lowest level of verb you could use. I might say use the Bowen family systems theory to explore or to examine the effect of trauma on the family emotional process. But this is the analysis verb, and then Bowen family systems theory is the HBSE theory. For me, this gets a little too close to integrative practice. It was a question that another faculty member approved, but it does provide a lot of explanation for why people engage in the behaviors that they do. So let's look at number 2, utilize critical race theory to critique the concept and application of cultural competence in social work education. So here the population is kind of hidden because we're talking about people who've accomplished social work education. So the population is social workers. What's the topic of interest?
Cultural competence?
Yeah, the concept and application of cultural competence. So this idea that we can become culturally competent is the area of focus. What's the analysis verb?
Critique.
Critique. And the theory?
Critical race theory.
There you go. So take a look at question number 3 and tell me who the population is, or tell all of us who the population is, the area of focus, the theory, and the analysis verb. Who can just shout out any one of those? Start wherever you see the element of it in the sentence.
So the population is emancipated foster youth.
Yep.
I forgot what the second thing on the list was.
The theory.
Oh. Attachment theory.
Yeah. What's the area of focus?
Understanding how attachment factors are connected to substance use disorders.
Yep. Yep. And the analysis verb, I don't think is very strong at all. They're going to utilize attachment theory to provide. Again, those are very low level, and I've dropped those off the list in recent years. You might say use attachment theory to examine, explore, assess.
Synthesize.
Yeah. Yeah, so higher levels. So go back to that Bloom's taxonomy page that had the 6 different columns in it with the different colors, and make sure you're using analysis verbs that are on the right-hand side of the page. So you get the idea of how to write these kinds of questions. It needs to include your population, your topic of or your focus, an HBSE theory or some type of human behavior theory, and an analysis verb. Does anybody have a question they'd like us to try to crowdsource here this evening?
I have one. I hope it works. I've already
Okay,
started writing.
sure, for sure.
So mine is utilize role theory as a critical framework to examine how conflicting societal expectations between one's native culture and host culture can lead to a culture stress.
Okay, I lost you a little bit through because I don't type that fast.
All right. Utilize role theory as a critical framework to
Got it?
examine how conflicting societal expectations between one's native culture and host culture can lead to a culture of stress.
Okay. How conflicting. I even spelled most of it right. Dang. So societal, I think. Societal. I don't know how to spell societal. Expectations between one's native culture and host culture can lead to a culture of stress. Okay. So, folks, what is the
Acculturative stress.
acculturative stress?
Yep.
Got it. Okay. So what is the theory? Let's ask everybody else in the class. What's the theory here, the human behavior theory?
Role theory?
Role theory, that's right. Role theory is the human behavior theory. Need to acculturative stress, let me clear that up. What is the analysis verb?
Examining.
Examining, yep. Okay, so we have a kind of an embedded population. It's the people who experience this phenomena. So it's not going to say Latino youth or something like that. But it's people in, and their native culture is the population, if you will. And then what's the issue?
I guess conflicting social expectations leading to acculturative stress.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going to expand this. So the population of people who have a native culture and are living in a different host culture. We're looking at the issue regarding conflicting societal expectations that lead to acculturative stress. Examine is the analysis word, and role theory is the theory. So even though this is a long question, it's a well-worded question, and it's very clear what these different elements are in it. Is that helpful?
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just trying to condense it or find a way to rewrite it, but I tried over and over again, and this is like the shortest I could get it without leaving out any important elements.
You might say between one's native and host cultures. That's about the only way I can see to cut it down.
Okay.
And it's not acculturative of stress, it's acculturative stress. And you're going to define that somewhere early on in your essay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's great. Who else would like us to crowdsource a question?
I have one. It's kind of like a two-part question.
Okay.
I'm still working on it. But it's explore the benefits of utilizing an ecological theory to assist educators in implementing successful transitions for ED students, emotionally disturbed students.
Yes, you would certainly write that out, ED, you would write it out in your question. So explore the benefits of utilizing an ecological theory. Did I get that right? To assist educators in implementing successful transitions for ED students.
And then the second part was describe how ecological theory can be implemented towards the success of an ED student, which is kind of, I'm just still trying to word it. Or
yeah, say that again. Describe how ecological theory can
be implemented towards the success of an ED student.
It's almost as if these are the same question.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me take them apart. So the first one looks at the benefits of it to assist educators. The second one is about implementation. And I would recommend deciding which one of these you'd like to do. And that in part is going to be driven by the research that you find. You might find research on ecological theory in ED students, and you might not. What you might have to do is break down what ecological theory is, and then what are the best practices for implementing the success of an ED student or integrating ED students, and use the ecological theory factors to say these factors contribute to these best practices.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So in each of these questions, the population is ED students, right? Is the population. Implementing successful transition seems to be the topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this transition to mainstream?
Yes.
Okay. You might want to say that.
Okay.
Because I might come back in a week's time and say implementation to what?
Right.
But I would recommend towards the implementing successful transitions to mainstream education, or whatever the term is right now. Is that still a thing, mainstream?
Yeah.
Okay. Here your theory is the same in both. One, it's ecological theory. And then here, this is describe. I would use a higher level of analysis. Again, my favorites are explore, examine, assess, and what you have in the first question.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So those, again, really interesting topics. We still have some more time. Who else would like us to crowdsource your question?
I have one, but it's very, very early. It's in its very early stages.
Okay.
And I feel like I can make it a little more complex, but it's using the ecological theory, examine the cultural and family dynamics that affect Latino families' perception of domestic violence, as well as help-seeking behaviors.
Did you say family violence or domestic violence?
Domestic violence, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
And help me with the question. Using the perception. Maybe that's a C. There we go. Examine the cultural and family dynamics that affect Latinos' family perceptions of domestic violence. What did I miss?
As well as help-seeking behaviors.
Okay. Okay, so it's clear what your theory is, right? So that's ecological theory. It's clear what your population is. That's Latino families. And it's clear what your analysis verb is. So you've got clarity on 3 out of 4. So what you're going to do is look at the cultural and family dynamics that affect the perception of domestic violence in Latino families. So you've added as well as help-seeking behaviors, which could be its own question if you wanted to do that. I would recommend that if you're going to keep this as the second part of the question, I would say something like provide social workers with, I'm just making this up, evidence of, no, we can just say best practices or culturally relevant help-seeking behaviors for this population. So that keeps it as a separate sentence, and it's clear what you're doing. You could also pull these apart and make each one an HBSE question. So you could either look at the cultural and family dynamics that affect the perceptions of domestic violence, or the cultural and family dynamics that contribute to culturally relevant help-seeking behaviors for this group. So you have a couple options as to which direction you'd like to go in.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It definitely, I was struggling with that, and that makes more sense. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So we're about out of time this evening. I'm going to ask if people have any last questions. I also want to say that if you want additional time with me, since I don't drive to Turlock and spend 2 hours on the road every day, I've got more time to sit online. And so I'm happy to set up some private time for you for a 15-minute session to go over a question. Also this week, I'm going to post these on the Moodle page so that folks can see these examples. Let me get back into Moodle. And edit, there we go. Well, it's looking weird to me this evening. So Moodle did crash this weekend. I don't know if anybody experienced that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was ugly. Okay.
Dr. Leiva, thank you for answering the question. I was about to ask you if we could somehow have some time on the side with you
Sure.
relating to coming up with the questions. I started working on mine, but I'm not fully complete with mine, so I didn't want to just bring it up just yet, but I was hoping that maybe I'll just, meet up with you via phone on a time or something like that to discuss more on some of my questions.
Sure.
And I didn't quite understand. I was about to clarify with you with these 3 questions that we're submitting in for each of the focus areas. At the end, we will be selecting one out of each section question, or will you be selecting those questions for us?
No, you select them. So absolutely. So I just, unfortunately, it didn't capture my highlighting on these questions, but we got them up on the Zoom page. So this is where you submit your sample questions that I read on Monday mornings, and put in any references that you've got at this point. So yes, I think that was Melanie speaking?
Yes.
Absolutely. Each week we're going to ask you to develop 3 questions, and I'm going to give you feedback much like I did this week. This question seems well developed. This one needs more work. But in the end, you pick the questions that you answer. My job is to make sure they're formatted grammatically correct and that they're answerable questions. It's not such a question. Somebody needs to mute their microphone, please. I want to make sure it's not such a big question that you can't answer it in 5 pages, or that it's so narrow a question that you're not going to find research on it. So my job is to help you hit the middle with that. But you are the ones that develop your own questions, and you choose your own questions to answer.
Okay, so I know that my part of the IPA question that I submitted, and I got some feedback from you, and thank you. I made some correction and I emailed it back, but is there a link that maybe we could, or I could submit it ahead of time before the deadline to just
to get more feedback?
To get more feedback before the final?
Sure. At this point, this is what I tell everybody. You please send whatever you have that week and the link for that week, because I know your work is right there and I can find it. If you want more assistance or you want more feedback, send me an email. My emails have started to drop off now that the initial crisis is over at the university. So I'm able to get through my emails every day. So yeah, send me an email. I remember seeing your email. I just haven't had the chance to circle back to it yet, but I will do that
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. So any questions about any part of this?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I know that you can't give us feedback, but I don't know if I was supposed to do this, but I did it when I submitted the last, actually I think I did it this morning. I submitted both my questions with the first paragraph or two for each section for, I submitted my intro paragraph, question 1, question 2, and then both intro paragraphs for the section 1 and 2. Can you at least let us know, like, oh, this looks like it's going in a good direction without giving us any?
Yeah, I can certainly tell you that you're on the right path or not.
Okay.
Or, gosh, is this your final draft? The grammar looks bad, or this is awesome. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Other questions? Alrighty, folks, keep yourselves safe. I'm going to be sending you links to apps for relaxation and meditation software and how to manage anxiety and all that kind of good stuff while we're going through all this. So take care of yourselves because you're no good to anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself. And stay safe. And I will see you all online next week. Next week, it's a different day of the week. Next week, I think it's Sunday. We're on Sunday, March 22nd. I was going out of town for spring break, but now I'm not. So I'm just going to keep the schedule that we initially set up. So we'll be on Sunday, March 22nd, which is like 5 days from now. So I will see you then.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you for all your help. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. So you all take care and see you in a few days. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.